Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel and welcome to my June reading wrap up. We're in a little bit of a different setting today, I hope you don't mind. I'm doing some tidying in the room that I usually film in with that lovely wallpaper behind me, and I haven't finished doing it, and it would just be too much of an effort and take too much time to sort it out so that I could sit and film. So I've got a little window of time today where I can sit and film this. I thought I would just park up next to my bookshelves. They don't look that aesthetically pleasing, but I did tie them up a little bit yesterday, so they're looking better than they were yesterday. So June was an odd month reading wise, and actually, funnily enough, I have kind of collated all the books together and then realised, hang on a second, I read an extra book that I hadn't got on my list in my reading journal of books that I'd read. So I was going and telling everybody that I'd read 4 books. I didn't, I read 5 in June. So I've read at least 10 books every month since the beginning of lockdown. I think last month I ended up reading 12 by the end of May. So I don't quite know what happened in June. I don't know if I've burnt myself out reading wise. I think I was a bit slumpy. I've read quite a lot of hard, detailed historical fiction, and I don't know if that's affected it as well, but I just kind of lost my reading mojo a little bit. We've also had a bit going on in our private lives, which has been quite a lot, like brain capacity wise. So hopefully that will pick back up in July and I'll get my reading mojo back a little bit and like get through all these books and get back up to maybe more like 10. I still don't know when I'm going back to work, so I don't know quite how much of the month I'm going to have, but make the most of the time that I do have off on furlough still to get as much read as possible. So let's get into the books that I read in June. So the first book that I read in June was Lake in the Clouds by Sara Donati. This is the 3rd book in the Wilderness series. I read the first 2 in May, I think the first one at the beginning and the second one towards the end of the month. Thoroughly enjoying this series, really enjoyed it so far. What was really interesting about this one is that it's set 8 years in the future from the second book. The first and second kind of roll straight one after the other pretty much, whereas this is 8 years in the future, which is really interesting because you've got characters that were like a young girl, a 10-year-old girl in the second book, and then when you get into this one, she's 18 now, she's a young lady, and it's just really interesting. What is interesting about this one is that this really brings to the forefront of the narrative the prejudice and discrimination faced by some of the racial groups that are portrayed in this narrative. So for instance, this one really goes into black slavery, and really deals with that, and also even more so than the first 2, the prejudice and discrimination towards the Kanukahaka, the Native Americans, American Indians, however they are described. And don't get me wrong, that is touched on and that those themes are present in the first 2 books, but it kind of really comes to the forefront in this. I don't want to yabber on about what this book is about because it's the 3rd in a series and I don't want to give away any spoilers, but I really do recommend it if you like historical fiction. Fans of Outlander, I think you'd really enjoy this series. The first book starts where Elizabeth, the sort of main character, she comes to her father's settlement in America. She's lived all her life in England, and she comes over to Paradise, which is the name of her father's settlement, and she's never visited before. She's in her late 20s. She's kind of like guarantees that she's going to be a spinster, and her dream is just to be a school teacher, and it basically all unfolds from there. And obviously you've got this settlement and how everything kind of unfolds from her and her brother's arrival in Paradise. So really recommend this one. I've talked before about not giving star ratings, but this is like a 5-star series for me. I really enjoy it, and like I say, if you're a fan of Outlander or kind of like more detailed historical fiction of this sort of era, we're talking 1790s, I think the first one's set in, really enjoy it. So highly recommend that one. The second book I read was Frankly in Love by David Yoon. I buddy read this with my friend Daisy May. We decided we wanted to do a buddy read in June. We weren't quite sure what we were going to read, and I gave her a few titles of some books off my TBR, asked her to do the same, but then we ended up picking David Yoon's Frankly in Love, which I had on my shelf already. And we both really enjoyed this book. I read part of this alongside, like in the second week of reading Lake in the Clouds. I kind of read this alongside Lake in the Clouds, and I think it was good to have something a little bit more contemporary and a little bit more fast paced and something a little bit smaller to have alongside it, kind of to settle it down a little bit. I don't know what I'm trying to say, to kind of soften the blow of reading a really dense book. And this one, like I said, we both thoroughly enjoyed it. We're really, really pleased that we both read it. This one is about a character called Frank. He is a Korean American. His parents came over from Korea and started a new life in America and started a family. He's got an older sister, and basically this book touches on identity. What does it mean to be American or Korean, and what it means to be Korean American, and some of the sort of things that are pushed on him, societal things that are pushed upon him, like who he should be dating or what he should be doing and how he should be studying, all those sorts of things that are kind of pushed on him by his parents and their expectations. It's kind of a really big theme throughout the book, and I did think quite early on that I thought I know what's going to happen, and I did get some of it right, but I think the bigger picture and the bigger part of the story I would never have guessed. And I really, really enjoyed this one, and it felt like it was just exactly what I needed. It felt like it had enough diversity, and it touched on themes of identity and what it means to be, you know, not feel like you identify with either Korean or American and feel like you don't have a place. Like that was a really interesting side to read from, you know, feeling like you don't fit in either place. And I think it was done really, really well as well. And I think David Yoon has recently put on social media that he's got another book coming out. I don't know all the details about it because I'm a fake fan, but I do believe I have actually pre-ordered it, I think, because I just went, I love this one so much, pre-order it. So it will be interesting to see more from this author. The third book I finished in June was The Switch by Beth O'Leary. This was very kindly gifted to me by Daisy May, who I bloody read Frankly in Love with. I loved this book. I literally read it in just over 24 hours. I blitzed through it. It's not massive, but it's not small either. I really enjoyed the flat share. Again, I think I read that in a similar period of time, like a couple of days, or if that. And Beth O'Leary just seems to be the sort of author that I just kind of like absolutely storm my way through her books and thoroughly enjoy them. So for anyone that doesn't know what The Switch is about, I think discuss this in my weekly reading vlog. Make sure you check out my weekly reading vlogs because I do go into details of the books that I'm reading. The Switch is about Lena and Eileen, her grandmother. Lena is working in London in quite a high-powered and stressful job, and she has an unfortunate situation in the boardroom and is sent on a 3-month sabbatical. They end up deciding to switch places, where Eileen comes down to London. She's looking for love. She's divorced from Lena's grandfather, and she comes down to London to try and look for love. And Lena moves up to Yorkshire into her grandmother's home and basically fills in for her grandmother while she's gone. Her grandmother's quite a pivotal part of the kind of society, neighbourhood watch, all that sort of thing. So really, really, really lovely story, really heartwarming, but also touches on some heavier topics as well. We have grief in here, and you just kind of like finding yourself, I suppose, as well. But really, really thoroughly enjoyed this, and like I said, I devoured this in just over 24 hours. And Beth O'Leary has got a book available for pre-order on Amazon. I believe it's called The Road Trip, which I've just automatically pre-ordered again because I've loved everything I've read by her so far. So that one gets a big thumbs up from me. Now, the one that I forgot to write anything about in my reading journal, which is really, really naughty of me, was On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. I think because I went straight from finishing this straight into reading my next book, literally without stopping, I think I forgot to write this up in my reading journal. But I really enjoyed this one as well. It was a really good reading month, can you tell? June was really good to me. Even though I didn't read that much, I enjoyed everything that I read. Thoroughly enjoyed everything I read. On the Come Up is set in the same area as The Hate U Give. It's set in Garden Heights, so there's a couple of kind of crossovers between the two, which is really quite nice. This one is centered around the character Brie. She wants to be the greatest rapper of all time. Basically all about her trying to get out there and trying to get her voice heard, and again it has themes of identity and like how she wants to use her voice and what's the right way to use her voice. thoroughly enjoyed this one and really enjoyed listening to this on audio because the passages that she's written, the passages that she raps, are in the book, and then on the audiobook are actually wrapped as well. It just brings another level to the audiobook and to the experience of consuming the story. Highly recommend it. It's really important. The kind of idea of, because she's black and wanting to stand up for what she believes is right, she's then kind of labelled as a troublemaker, or and that was a really interesting thing to read about as well. And yeah, very prevalent at the moment, talking about Black Lives Matter, which is very much still at the forefront of everyone's mind. It was really interesting to read this side of read Bree's story, and see that sort of side of life that perhaps as a white person I don't get to see. So very interesting. Highly recommend it. And again, I think Angie Thomas has recently announced that she's coming out with a new book. Again, I don't know an awful lot about it, but automatically pre-ordered it because, you know, it's all those standout authors, you just know you have to pick up those books. And then finally, the 5th book, which is a bit annoying because it's called The Four Swans, and I thought it was the 4th book that I'd read. The Four Swans by Winston Graham is the 6th book in the Poldark series. I'm not going to tell you again what this is about because it's the 6th book in a series, but Poldark itself as a series is about a man called Ross Poldark who comes back from the war in America, and he comes back to a very different Cornwall to what he left behind, and basically it's the fallout and the kind of slow burn, just general ticking over of life as it kind of progresses throughout the books. It's not like, yes, okay, there are moments that are quite like important moments, but this is just kind of a bit more of a general like follow of life in Cornwall, if that makes sense. Enjoyed this one. Did manage to finish it and read 400 odd pages in like the last 2 days of the month, and managed to get it finished in time for it to count for June. I did not want to fall behind on my reading one a month and fail in the months where I'd read like hardly anything. So very glad that I read this one. I feel like this one's taking, you know, this is partly where the story really starts to take a turn that is not necessarily the best, and obviously I have watched the TV show, so I kind of know where it's going, and I'm really looking forward to picking up the next instalment and seeing how some things are rectified that have kind of left a little bit in the air at the end of this book. So you're looking forward to picking up the next instalment, The Angry Tide, in July. So this is all of the books that I've read in June. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have you read any of these books? If so, I'd love to hear about it down below in the comments. And if you haven't, what have you been reading in June? What did you read in June? What was your standout book of the month? Don't forget, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you all in my next one. Thank you. Bye.